I'm very happy to be here and so glad you reached out to me. I am going to be presenting on our mountain lion. I do make presentations on all 5 species, but our focus is on mountain lions right now for reasons that I think will become clear as I go through the presentation. I will show you, I've got kind of a hybrid presentation of a sort tonight. I'm going to show you, because I know Claire said you wanted to see some photos of Texas mountain lions. So I'm going to show you a few of those and a few other slides from a primary presentation that I make a lot. And then I'm going to switch off to my presentation on partnering for change regarding Texas mountain lions. So we will get going here because it's a lot of information and I want to make sure we finish this up. I think we need to be done by 8. Is that right? My understanding.
It would be good, but we can run over a little bit if that.
Okay, well, no, I will do my best to be finished by 8 o'clock. Otherwise,
all right.
you
we'll
might
have some questions probably.
Yeah, you might have me on here all night otherwise. All right, well, let me go ahead and share a screen and I need to get it in presentation mode. So from the beginning, all right. So this is, as I said, this is one of my original presentations I did, and actually it's on all the cats, but I have just singled out the images and a bit of information about Texas mountain lions. So as you can see here, this is definitely a mountain lion. It's a collared mountain lion that was part of a study in West Texas at Borderlands Research Institute. I'll be talking about that organization a little bit more, but just know that Patricia Harvison at Borderlands, which was part of Sol Ross, is the only person that had been doing any current research, any studies on mountain lions in the entire state. Now that's based out in Alpine, and she did a study out at the Davis Mountains, which is where this cat was filmed, and also Big Bend National Park. She has just concluded those 2 studies and will be publishing a book about them. So one of the ways, of course, that researchers can follow mountain lions and know where they go, of course, is to collar them. And that's what you're seeing here. I think this is actually a GPS and a radio collar combination. But that's first screen there. Let's see. Let's go on just a little bit, digressing a bit beyond Texas, but just to let you know where these cats live. They are a species only in the New World, in the Western Hemisphere, and their range, you can see in the brown, was their original range, and you see it goes from southern Canada all the way down to the tip of South America. This is the most widely spread mammal in the Western Hemisphere outside of mountain lions. These days, mountain lions have been pushed back into the western part of the United States and Canada, and they still have a pretty good stronghold here down in Brazil, through a good number of countries there, all the way to the tip of Patagonia. So that's their range, as it says here. They exist in 28 countries. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about mountain lions, I highly recommend this organization down here in the bottom right, Panthera. It's panthera.org. They are the only organization that is totally focused on the world's wildcats. So let's just say a little bit about these cats. Again, I already told you about they're the most widely spread mammal that we have. The fact that people say they see black panthers, there has been no scientific evidence ever that there is such a thing as a black panther or mountain lion. Now, these cats have a lot of names. You'll hear the name panther, you'll hear mountain lion, cougar, puma, panther, catamount. There's many, many names for them. But black panthers do not exist. Black leopards, yes. Black jaguars, yes, but not mountain lions. The weights of these cats, and these are primarily here in Texas, because our cats tend to be a bit smaller than they are in the western states, primarily due to terrain, to habitat. You know, let's face it, it's hot, it's dry here in Texas. The prey species are smaller as well. So the cats are not as big. And you'll see here that the males are bigger than the females, and that is true of all cat species. The males in Texas tend to be closer to this 110-pound size. They can get bigger. Like the one that was killed in Dallas or outside Dallas last December weighed, I believe, 160 pounds, which is That's pretty big for a Texas mountain lion. Females are smaller, a fair amount, as you can see here. These cats are incredible at jumping and leaping. I mean, they're just, you see images of them in trees, for instance, or you'll see images of them jumping up on a cliff. Very, very adept at that. That's one of the reasons that they have such very long tails, because they use that for balance. Now, in their longevity, in captivity, a mountain lion can live approximately 20 years. I mean, it varies. That is assuming, of course, that it has good care. In the wild, typically about half that. Being a predator in the wild is a rough life, and most predators, at least the cat species anywhere, just don't live all that long. And they live, as you can kind of imagine from that range map I just showed you, they live just about wherever they want to live. They are highly, highly adaptable animals. They can live in very frigid conditions, from the Rockies down to the Andes of South America. They live in deserts and swamps, almost everywhere except cities. They don't like cities too much generally. Their primary diet is deer. That is either whitetail or mule deer. And they also eat some other species, javelina, elk, and guess what? They will kill feral hogs, which is an animal that, as you probably know, is an invasive species, causes about $52 million in damages every year to the state of Texas. So for these cats to take out feral hogs is a good thing. They are also known to kill deer with chronic wasting disease. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, with CWD as it's called, but it's somewhat like mad cow disease. There's no cure for it. It's highly contagious among deer, or what they call cervids. And these mountain lions will seek out these weakened species and kill them, which is good because it takes them out of circulation and spreading the disease. And amazingly enough, these cats do not develop the disease themselves. So they're doing a real service in that regard. Now, the male cats, and this again is true of all males in any species, have a much bigger range than the females, largely because the territories are policed by full adult tomcats, and the tomcats do not share very well with other males. So these young adult, these what they call subadult males, are forced very often to go long, long distances to find suitable habitat for themselves. This ugly picture here is still more or less where we are in Texas, believe it or not. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a date down here in the bottom corner here that says 1922. Nearly 100 years ago, these cats were treated as varmints, as vermin. And frankly, in the minds of some, they still are today. We'll talk a little bit about that some more when I get to my other presentation. This is typical trapping, which is legal in the state of Texas. I'll talk about that as well. This image over here is what's called a pan tension trap. So these are quite widespread in West Texas, and the animal, which, you set this tension on this thing for the weight of the animal you want to trap, and an animal steps on it. Maybe it's the intended species, maybe it's not. And those jaws snap shut, securing the leg, and the cat cannot, or whatever it is, cannot move. That's a pan tension trap. And by the way, there is no mandatory trap check time for any mountain lion that's in a trap. This is another type called a snare trap. This is up in Brewster County, and maybe a little bit hard. I'm not sure how clear this image is on your screen. Excuse me. But it's just a snare, and the animal walks into it, and just like this pan tension, it grabs onto the leg and the animal cannot move. So going back just a minute to Saul Ross about the two studies that were being undertaken. And you can go out to Saul Ross Institute or just do a Google search on Borderlands Research Institute and read up on some of the work that's been done out there that Patricia and her team had been doing. Davis Mountain study had been going on, well, for 10 years. I highlighted a couple of things here. Out of the mountain lions that they collared, well, look at this statistic. 9 of them died, 7 due to predator control programs. In other words, mostly trapping. And the diet, again, I told you before, they'll eat deer and elk, and they kill feral hogs. And interestingly enough, there is, and in their research at the time, over 200 mountain lion kill sites that they investigated, there was no evidence at all of any livestock depredation. So what are they killing? They're killing deer, they're killing feral hogs, and all of their wild prey species that they typically would consume. The other study was at Big Bend National Park. Because it's a protected area, the cats are older, they're not hunted. They were seen at various times throughout the day, and they tend to live longer. And there, the whole idea was to emphasize coexistence. So here's just some photos that Patricia gave me several years ago. There's this beautiful specimen of a mountain lion right here in West Texas. You notice there's a camera over here on this tree. There'd be another one on this side, and there might even be one in the background to capture this image. This one, look how well this cat blends in with these great big rocks. This again is at Fort Davis. Cat's collared there, and you see but you can tell it's a cat, but it's kind of hard to distinguish from the rocks. And look at that paw. I always like this photo because it gives you an idea of proportion. In other words, you see the man hand holding this paw, and it gives you an idea how big it is. Now, it's big. I will tell you, it's not the biggest in the world. The biggest paw you would ever see would be from a tiger, particularly Siberian. But nonetheless, it's a good sized paw. Canine tooth. So I don't know how familiar you are with any research projects where scientists will go and capture a certain prey, a certain species that they're interested in, but they'll sedate them usually with a dart gun. Once the animal has succumbed to the medication, then they'll take body measurements and blood samples, do measurements like this so they can get some sort of idea of the health and age of this animal. And that's what this was intended to do here. And my old hometown, El Paso, I grew up there. And this is a camera image of a mountain lion, very obviously getting a drink from a spring up in the mountains. So that is all I have as far as pictures here for this. I would, and I'll encourage you to this now, ahead of the other presentation. We have a newsletter that I typically try to send out 3 or 4 times a year. You can sign up for that newsletter on texasnativecats.org, our website. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. So if any of those appeal to you, we're all under the name of Texas Native Cats. We have virtual guest speakers every month except for December. We just had our last guest speaker on the 7th. Our next one will be Sunday, January 9th on ocelots. This is from a professor at Texas A&M Kingsville who is studying ocelots in South Texas. And you see there the title. If you're interested in this one or any other ones, you can send me an email and I will send you an invitation. It's all virtual, of course. Be happy to have you join us. So keep that in mind. I would say educate yourself and others about cat issues in this state or any wildlife that you're interested in. And here is my email address, monica@texasnativecats.org. Again, you can also reach me through the website. One last thing here, I highly recommend you spend 7 to 9 minutes watching this film. Any of you heard of Ben Masters? He is a Texas filmmaker and is working with us on behalf of mountain lions in the state. He made a very short film of the work going on at Borderlands Research Institute several years ago. It's just simply called The Lions of West Texas. You can find this on our website. It's on the homepage, or you can go out and do a Google search on it as well. And there is that handy sign up for the newsletter if you are interested in that as well. So let's move in. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment, and I'm going to launch the other presentation.
I definitely recommend that video she was talking about, that YouTube on her website. So that was a good one to watch. It was very good.
Okay, that's good. You saw it. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and by the way, Ben Masters is coming out with another film next year called Deep in the Heart. And it will feature mountain lions and especially what is taking place out in West Texas regarding these cats. So look for that. It should be coming out in April. All right, can everybody see this screen all right?
Looks great.
I think there's a way, isn't there, to do full screen, or is this full screen for you?
It is coming across mine as full screen.
Oh, okay, great.
People can get it that way. They might have to tweak with their windows or something.
Okay, good. Yeah, I use Google Meet all the time, so I always have to reacquaint myself with Zoom and some of the other tools that are out there. All right, so this is a presentation that I made last month for the at the annual meeting of Texas Master Naturalists. I am a member of the North Texas chapter, and this is one of our official projects. So the title of this is Partnering for Change, the Journey to Secure a Better Future for Texas Mountain Lions. Again, thanks to Ben, a couple more photos here of mountain lions, and there'll be a few more as we move along here. So what benefits do cats provide us? And really you can say this about predators in general, but here we're talking about mountain lions. Well, they help reduce the rodent population. They eat carrion, although I will say that's not typically their favored diet, but they certainly will eat it if it's available. They are at the top of the food chain, and that means that they help control the lesser species as well. They help maintain this ecosystem's health and diversity. So for instance, as I noted in the last presentation there about chronic wasting disease, it's just a horrible disease with really no good outcome. These cats will do their part in eliminating these diseased animals. They also help prevent certain, deer or rabbits, whatever it is, from proliferating so that they don't get so out of hand that it causes problems for species even beneath the deer and the rabbits. And again, I've already mentioned this, they may prefer deer with chronic wasting disease, not because they like chronic wasting disease, but because the deer are in a weakened state and they're very easy prey. They don't have to go to much effort to kill them. They kill feral hogs, and they're an iconic species. So what is the state of our mountain lion in Texas? All right, so this is its current classification is determined by the state legislature about 50 years ago. It is classified as non-game, meaning it has absolutely no protection at all. What does that mean? That means there's no limit on hunting. There is no limit on trapping. And you saw a couple of examples of traps that are in use. That's legal in Texas. If somebody kills a mountain lion, there is no mandatory reporting of that to the game agency, to Texas Parks and Wildlife. It's purely voluntary, which means that quite frankly, the agency has no idea how many mountain lions we have. There is no mandatory trap check times. So as I mentioned in the last film, if a mountain lion is trapped in one of those traps, there's no requirement that private trappers have to go out there and check those traps as they do, for instance, with the fur bearer species. Fur bearers are, the trappers are required to check their traps. I think it's every 36 hours. Not so with mountain lions. So if they're a mountain lion in one of those traps, the animal is typically left to die either through exposure or through dehydration, or both. We have no idea how many we have. We have no abundance data in this state. And yet, this is a real clincher here. If you go out and look at Texas Parks and Wildlife website, and you do a search for species of greatest conservation need, you will find that mountain lions are classified in the state as imperiled/vulnerable. And so you're asking yourself, wait a minute, how is that possible? How can you have an animal that has absolutely no protection, and yet obviously there are problems with the longevity of this animal? Well, let's move on and talk about some of that. Our mountain lion, again, you read this here. The first definition is for imperiled and vulnerable. It's a lack of state level management and lack of data. Hunting and trapping are very widespread, especially in West Texas. Populations there seem to be persisting based on anecdotal information. Well, if any of you are scientists, you know that anecdotal information is just that. It's not proof. Based on a study that was done by Joel Holbrook, who was a researcher at the time, The South Texas population appears to be declining and may have declined more than 50% from historic levels. Why? Because of trapping and hunting. It also appears that the population in South Texas is becoming inbred to some degree due to a lack of immigration. You may know about the Florida panther, which is also a mountain lion. The Florida panther is also a species that was in decline, still is, I wouldn't really call it too stable. Its numbers have improved somewhat, but because it was so fragmented, so cut off from other species of mountain lions, there was a lot of inbreeding, which led to things like all sorts of genetic defects, crossed eyes, kinked tails, undescended testicles. I mean, animals are, the cats were just in a very bad situation. So much so that about 20 years ago, there were I think five or six female mountain lions from West Texas, Big Bend, that were actually brought into South Florida to help stabilize the gene pool. And it succeeded. But our cats in South Texas may be headed the same way as the Florida panther. So imperiled and vulnerable, frankly, the difference between these two is a matter of degree. Imperiled, of course, is a worse status. As you see there, often 20 or fewer, making it vulnerable to extirpation. The same with vulnerable. You know, do we really want to lose this cat from the state? Parks and Wildlife has this handy tool that's actually real time. I mean, not in this display, it isn't, but if you go out to the tool, it's real time. And you can click on there and it'll show you how many mountain lion confirmed, not anecdotal, but these are confirmed mountain lion sightings there have been. This one in the last 365 days. At the time, there were 34. And you see the counties here that are numbered showing where these cats were spotted. And, you know, you look here and it's pretty obvious. Okay, well, most of them seem to be in West Texas, maybe some into South Texas. And that's about it. You know, one up in the Panhandle, the one outside Dallas last year, and one around, I guess that's Austin, but mostly along the border. All right, if you look at it over time, since 1982 is when they started keeping these confirmed mountain lion sightings data, you'll see, again, it becomes very clear where the stable population of mountain lions are in the state, and it's in West Texas. You see the very large, well, very large, relatively speaking, to South Texas and elsewhere, numbers that exist out there. Like, I think this is Brewster County, and this one, I think is Presidio. So you see some high numbers, and it kind of persists a bit. And then the farther you get down to the valley, they decline much less throughout the rest of the state. So this is their stronghold. This area of South Texas is thought to be a very fragmented habitat. And as well, with the border wall going up, this is something we talked about in a meeting today, border wall going up in South Texas, immigration from Mexico will be very limited here. And that's one reason that it's thought the population in West Texas is more stable, is because of immigration, both from Mexico and New Mexico, with cats coming in. So how many do we have? We don't know. Texas Parks and Wildlife doesn't know either. Truly, we don't know. What are the reasons for their decline? Well, deliberate action, as you've seen here, things like predator control, as it's called, in other words, trapping, both by private trappers and ranchers, and also the federal government trap. Hunting, particularly in South Texas, is an issue. Removal and retaliation for real or perceived threats. And also wildlife killing contests. I don't know if you're familiar with those or not. If you do a Google search on wildlife killing contests, particularly in Texas, you'll see quite a lot. These are, well, they call them contests, where a landowner will dedicate a few days to this event, and the people will register and pay some pricey tickets to get into this. And during that time frame, people come out with their rifles and whatever guns they want to use, and they'll use calling devices a lot of times to lure in animals. And it could be, a lot of times it's coyotes, it could be bobcats, it could be foxes, it could be mountain lions, and they lure them in, and then they open fire on these animals. And there's no there's no real there's no scientific merit to it. They're really just appropriately called killing contests, and whoever kills the most or the biggest wins a prize. And in Texas, that can be a very, very large cash prize. I mean, sometimes six-figure prize. So it's quite lucrative for certain people. Unintentional actions, isolation of populations, whether that's in West Texas or South Texas or anywhere else. Isolated populations, of course, again, can lead to things like inbreeding. The human population impact. My gosh, I don't have to tell you, you're close to Houston. I'm in Dallas. We know what the. Can somebody mute, please?
Carol?
I did it. That's okay. I did it.
Good. Thank
you. Yeah. Anyway, human population impact. We know the explosive growth this state has seen in the last 5 to 10 years, and it's just going to continue. I mean, my goodness, Dallas-Fort Worth is the 4th largest metropolitan area in the country now. And it's not altogether bad, because I think it's brought in some different attitudes, and sometimes maybe some more acceptance of things that perhaps people here haven't accepted. But again, there's a big impact, particularly in lower Rio Grande Valley. A lot of impact there, especially to the ocelot population. Car strikes are an issue as well. Although again, we don't know how many there are involving mountain lions, because people don't have to report it. If they want to, they can, but they don't have to. Loss of habitat or habitat fragmentation, big factor. That's the biggest factor affecting wildlife throughout the world. Unknown impact, all right, things like disease. We don't really know if there are diseases affecting mountain lions in this state or not. It's never been studied, to my knowledge. Climate change. Tomorrow, I'm actually sitting in on a Mountain Lion Foundation virtual meeting to talk about the impacts of climate change on mountain lions, not specifically to Texas, but just in general. And I think we all know that it's bound to have an impact. We just don't know what it is yet. Rodenticide, or rat poison, is another unknown in Texas. There have been a lot of studies, particularly in Southern California, with the Santa Monica and Santa Ana mountain lions there, and the use of rodenticide to control rodents. And unfortunately, what happens is rodenticide is used to kill, let's say, rats. And then what happens? A mountain lion or a bobcat or a coyote, whatever it is, comes along and consumes that rodent and ingests a whole lot of rodenticide. So with that rodenticide, it weakens their system. They can develop mange, or they'll have mange, and if their immune systems are down because of the rodenticide, they'll die. And there have been numerous cases in California where they're finding that to be the case. Now, at this point in Texas, I'm not aware of any studies that have really been done on rodenticide impacts to wildlife. I think its time will come, and I think that there will be some studies done on this. Decreases in.
And Monica, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I know they've done some rodenticide studies related to owls and birds of prey.
In Texas?
In Texas, yeah. Huh. I guess people could probably find it, but by Googling that. But they had some options for other options than rodenticide, but I haven't checked into that. But that's apparently that kind of stuff is available out there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you're interested, just do Google Santa Monica mountain lions and rodenticide, and I'm sure you'll get an eyeful there too. Well, I'm glad to know that there have been some studies on owls. Birds of prey, of course, are another species affected by this horrible poison. So interesting side note here, and I digress momentarily, but I guess it was the end of September. Now, mind you, I live right literally in the middle of Dallas. If you're familiar with Dallas, I'm right off Mockingbird and the Toll Road, which is about 10 minutes north of downtown. So I'm smack in the middle of the urban area here. And we had a coyote show up on premises. And the poor guy was just a pup. And he was so confused and so lost. Somehow he got separated from his family. I think he later met up with them. But a good friend of mine who's an amazing wildlife photographer came down because she and her husband do a lot of rehab work with coyotes. And she got some images of this coyote, and she said she lives in Allen, which is, oh, I don't know, it's probably about a 30 to 45-minute drive north of Dallas. It's a suburb. There's a lot of construction going on out there. And the coyotes that she sees in Collin County do not look good. They have mange, they're skinny, as opposed to this coyote that we saw right here in my neighborhood, look very, very healthy. But there's no construction going on here. So there is some sort of connection, I think, at least in her area, with rodenticide use and in terms of using it for construction projects that is affecting wildlife there. Decreases in prey species, possible. Not really sure. I don't really know, again, if anybody has looked into that. And as I mentioned a little while ago, excuse me, the border wall, at least in South Texas, would have an impact on mountain lions and potentially other species. Now, to my knowledge, the border wall is not a factor in West Texas. It is certainly there in El Paso. I've seen it, but if you head west or head east from El Paso, all along the border, you're talking desert and mountains and nothing out there. So I don't think the border wall would ever be that far west. Just some images here of some of the things I've mentioned. Habitat disruption here. This is the Eagle Ford Shale, extending from really the southern part of Texas, really all the way up to DFW, quite frankly. And a lot of human disturbance with, big trucks moving in, heavy equipment, disruption to anything. This big bright area here is San Antonio. This is just another image of one of those tracks that I was showing you. Border wall. This is in South Texas. It's a recent photo. I don't know if they ran out of construction materials or what, but it's like, you got a gap right here, folks. I'm assuming they're not finished with it. This photo up here is from California, although quite frankly, it looks like it could be in El Paso, but it's not. And this again just shows the human habitat disruption that is caused by people moving in and squeezing wildlife more and more out of its own territory. And this headline here is just from an article National Geographic ran on the wildlife killing contest, asking what kind of contest is this? So there's this image here of a chart, and I know it's a lot of information and your eyes are probably glazing over thinking, my gosh, what is all this stuff? Let me just explain it to you. This is a list of all states in this country that have a resident mountain lion population. And in there, you will see the legal status that's classified by the legislatures in these states. Most of these states classify this cat as a game species, meaning that there are certain regulations that apply for hunting seasons and such. North Dakota classifies them as fur bearers. California and Florida, they're protected. Are there hunting seasons? Yes, they're very definitely. Total population estimates, and that's all it is, because nobody will ever know for sure exactly how many mountain lions live in each state. But these other states have had 50 years to kind of figure out the science behind mountain lions. So you see estimates here on the population sizes. Is there a quota? In other words, is there a number that can't be, there's only a quota for a certain area? Yes, there is. Do they have protections for females with kittens? Just about all of them do, as you can see here, going down the list. Is there a bag limit? In other words, how many mountain lions is somebody allowed to shoot each season? Yeah, most of them it's 1 or 2, and that's it. And then when they reach that limit, which is another reason for mandatory reporting of an animal, of a mountain lion that's killed, when they reach that limit, they close the hunting season for that particular management unit, as it's called, where these cats live. Do they allow hunting with dogs? Most of them do, not all, but most. Mandatory harvest inspection, absolutely. Hunters are required, I think it's usually within 24 hours, to report by hotline. that yes, I've killed a mountain lion, and then within a certain time frame after that, they're required to show the carcass to a game authority just to confirm that yes, it is a mountain lion. And you'll see here traps. Is trapping okay? No, absolutely not. You don't find any other state that allows trapping. As a matter of fact, in at least some of these states whose regulations I've looked into, if a mountain lion is trapped, the trapper is required to release a mountain lion. Cannot leave it in there. Is there compensation to the landowner or rancher in case there's some livestock depredation? A couple of them have it. It's not terribly popular. And so you see kind of a pattern here with most of these states, at least at some level. You know, yes, they have regulations, they have limitations on how many can be hunted. There's no trapping. Yes, they have to report. You got to protect females with kittens. And then you come down here to Texas. And here we are. Non-game. There is no regulation. You can hunt all year long. Doesn't matter. Don't know how many we have. There's no limit on the number. You can kill whatever you want. You can kill males, females, kittens, doesn't matter. There's no limit on the number you can kill. Can you hunt with dogs? Sure. Is harvest inspection required? No, purely voluntary. There's nothing to report. Trapping? Yes, absolutely. So the first time I saw this, well, it was a forerunner to this particular slide several years ago. I saw this, and to me, this slide just summed up everything that is wrong in this state regarding mountain lions. It just absolutely stands out from everybody else what is wrong. So they face an uncertain and perhaps bleak future here. So what can we do to secure a future for our apex predator? So Texas Native Cats launched an effort a little over a year ago. I don't know, I just had this revelation one day that's okay, it's time to push for a change. And I will tell you, this has been an evolutionary project ever since. It's quite an undertaking. We recognize that the steps we have to take to help our mountain lions is something that will probably take several years and have required an awful lot of work. Fast forward to May of this year, we had our first ever Change for Mountain Lions kickoff meeting with a group of experts, and I'll clue you in on a little bit of that here in a minute. So right here, participants. I'm not giving names yet because I want to make sure that everybody's all right with my using their names, but I'm giving you a description of who they are. Mountain lion biologist, director of animal advocacy, another one that's with an animal advocacy group, member of the Wildlife Advisory Committee, mountain lion biologist and director of a prominent big cat organization, a filmmaker, biologist and vet, a senior leader of a Texas conservation organization, and director of a Texas wildlife organization. We are now known as the working group. So there are 10 of us all together. And we just had another meeting today to talk about progress, where we're going. There's no roadmap for this, so we're having to create our roadmap as we go. So I liken this whole project to a giant puzzle. I was trying to figure out, okay, what kind of image can I use that actually conveys the various components of this effort? Oh, Lisa Griffiths raised a hand.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Do you get Center for Biological Diversity helping you, because they've gone through this state after state based in Arizona? They really help a lot. I called them when there was a big fervor in Crown Oaks about a bobcat.
Yeah.
And so I got some literature from them. They mailed it to me. I had a meeting with Crown Oaks. Don't bother the bobcat. They won't bother you. They won't eat their dogs.
Right.
Control them. I mean, you know, it's just this hysteria thing.
Yeah.
And they kept saying it was a mountain lion. I said, we haven't had a cougar, mountain lion, whatever you want to call them, since something like 1952. It's the last time it was ever near Harris County. but that's a really good organization.
Yeah, yeah, I'm familiar with them. As a matter of fact, one of the conversations we had today in our meeting was that we need to start reaching out to other organizations. As you could probably kind of gather from just the previous slide, the makeup of the group right now is primarily a lot of scientists, and we certainly need scientists because they're the ones with the information and that can really apply the logic to this cat and its survival. But we also need other groups to get involved, and that is something we need to focus on very soon. As I have said to this group, and I've said it to Texas Parks and Wildlife, while landowners are crucial to a change for a mountain lion, let's not forget that 85% of people in this state live in the urban areas. And that has been a group so far that we haven't really done a lot of outreach to so far. I've been in contact with a couple of them. And we will be reaching out to them soon once we get some final answers here from Texas Parks and Wildlife that we're waiting to hear back on. So I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your comment, and certainly they would be one of the ones I think that we would reach out to at some point. We're just not quite ready to do it yet. So back to the puzzle here. As you can see, there are a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and they're not in any particular order, as you can tell here, but they are all equally important right now. And it's a matter of figuring out, okay, what are we working on, and who's in charge of which component of it. And it's starting to become more in focus, but we've got, as I said, we've got a lot of work ahead of us to do. So let's look at some of these here. This, I question whether or not this article is the prevailing attitude in Texas, or is there something else that's the prevailing attitude? And I guess that depends a lot on who it is you ask. But last year, in December, early December, a mountain lion was killed outside Dallas. I don't know, maybe 30 miles northeast of here. And I will tell you, people in this community were upset. They were very upset about this. So much so, the Dallas Morning News actually ran this editorial, and a couple of other ones. Don't kill our mountain lion. Let's do more to protect. Well, we don't do anything to protect him. Can't we do something? And then it goes on to say the hunting rules that are applied to mountain lions are best for the species. Is it best for their long-term survival? Would we be better off in limiting or actually getting rid of mountain lion hunting? Yes. What they didn't touch on was trapping. I don't think they're too aware of trapping. This beautiful silent animal that slipped past the trail camera in Rowlett surely deserves better from us than that. We have expertly hemmed in so much of their natural world. Can we not have the wisdom to protect those pieces of it that would remain among us? So I thought, well, all right, is this what people believe? Well, let's find out. So takes us to our next slide. We are working with Texas A&M on a revamped attitude survey regarding mountain lions in the state of Texas. This was a survey that was done about 20 years ago. Somebody's got a mic on. If I could ask you, can't see who it is.
It's the person on the phone, and they probably don't know how to mute. Do you have the option to mute them?
I can't, well, I'm trying to figure out who it is.
The one with the 832 number.
Oh, yes, I do. Thank you. Okay, muted now.
Thank you. And
right.
You'll unmute them later, and because they probably can't figure that out either. It's hard.
I get it. All right. Anyway, so we're partnering with them to revise and update a survey that went out about 20 years ago. That survey went out to a cross section of Texans, landowners, rural residents, urban people, Spanish speakers, and so on. And the results were overwhelmingly positive about our cats 20 years ago. People wanted to know more. They wanted to make sure that they survived. So we thought, all right, well, let's try this again 20 years later and see what the response is. So Partnered with Texas A&M, got a very nice grant from the Summerlee Foundation so Texas A&M could do the work. And again, it's going out to a cross section of stakeholders, asking key questions about people's knowledge about the cats. What do they think about them? Are they afraid of them? Do they hate them? Whatever. What is their the individual's group affiliation? Are they rural or whatever it happens to be? And their socio-demographic profile. Now, they've just started work on it this month. And if all goes well, we should have the finalized results April of next year. So very excited to do this. I think this is going to be a really good indication of what people think in this state about our cat. And I will tell you, most people in this state do not realize these cats have no protection. So what are we doing as far as education and awareness? Well, obviously doing things like this tonight, but website, Facebook, Instagram, newsletter, and Twitter. We don't have huge volumes of people yet, but we are growing, we are expanding, and that's one of the means of getting the word out. We're starting an education program in schools. Some of my volunteers and I are working on putting together the curriculum for this. We will start on mountain lions and ultimately branch out to all 5 species of cats. We've got a couple of pilot schools here in the area, one in Fort Worth and one in Dallas. And we want to see statewide education for all Texas cats. Obviously, you know, that's a lot of territory to bite off. So it's going to be a gradual program, but we really do believe, and as trite as it sounds, the kids are the future. We need to get them educated so they can help educate the adults as well. The guest speaker presentations, I already mentioned that. This year in 2021, we had 4 mountain lion presentations. You'll see there. We'll have probably some more next year. I think Patricia Harvison will come back and talk about her study at Big Bend National Park. Public outreach, presentations. We participated in a virtual catwalk for mountain lions here in Dallas this month. Participated at another place, John Bunker Sands Wetlands area. We had a Facebook event as well. And then, I don't know if you know this or not, but the city of Fort Worth is also known as Panther City. It's a kind of interesting little sidebar here, but the story goes that in the last century, a businessman from Dallas went to downtown Fort Worth, and he said, it was so dull, there was nothing going on, it was the sleepiest little old town, and he said it was so bad that there was even a mountain lion, or panther as he called it, asleep in the middle of the city street. Well, the people of Fort Worth just had a field day with that, and they embraced that image wholeheartedly, to the point where even the police badges have an image of a panther on it. There are buildings that are named after Panther City. So at some point, we want to capitalize on this because it just seems too good to be true to pass up Panther City when we're trying to make a change for our mountain lions. Some of our supporters, this is not all of them by any means, but you see the list there, people that are working with us. So the road to change. This is our vision. We want to ensure a future for these cats through defensible scientific management. We want to collaborate and have public outreach and education. So we're seeking a population management policy through Texas Parks and Wildlife and/or the commission. And quite frankly, if we have actually 2 avenues to us, the other one would be through the legislature. By meaning a population management policy, it's things like you saw on that chart a minute ago that these other states have: regulated hunting seasons, elimination of trapping, and all of that, of course, you know, is probably something gradual because it's probably going to be kind of hard for some people to stomach and about face after all this time of non-game species. So we've had several meetings since May, which, as I said, we just had our last one this afternoon. Texas Parks and Wildlife said the most significant cause of mountain lion mortality in Texas is trapping. We want to collaborate across stakeholder groups. We know certain stakeholders will be worried about any kind of change. We may end up either through one of our organizations we're working with or through Texas Parks and Wildlife do a statewide lion camera trap study. So we actually have an idea of the abundance of these cats in the state. We had a meeting back in July with Carter Smith, the executive director of Texas Parks and Wildlife, and a number of his staff. And they had a keen interest in our attitude survey. And they also suggested that we get some viewpoints from some key individuals they named. And also said, well, why don't, it'd be a good idea if one of you presented at the Texas Parks and Wildlife Annual Commission open meeting, because we only have one a year. And there I am in the blue in Austin back in August, talking to the commission about our mountain lions. It's essentially the same thing I told them 3 years ago. What are our goals? And these goals are somewhat fluid, I would say right now. I say short term and long term, but these could be modified over time. But short term, we'd like to get some idea of, doing a survey perhaps of the population. Require that anybody that kills a mountain lion report it, and have mandatory trap check times. Longer term, honestly, in my mind, I'd like us to look like some of these other states with the regulations they have. Let's get rid of the trapping, for goodness sakes, at the very least. So there are two avenues, as I said, either through Texas Parks and Wildlife and the commission, or through the legislature. Quite frankly, if we can get something accomplished through the agency and the commission, it would be easier and probably less time consuming than trying to go through the legislature. I think we all know what a challenge that is these days. The commission cannot change the classification from non-game to anything else, but the commission has the authority to provide protections similar to what I'm talking about if they want to designate that happens. So it would be the easier way to go, the more expedient, we think. We'll see. Whether it's through the commission or the legislature, either one of these is going to require that people in this state voice their concerns and push for a change. One of our members, who's a renowned wildlife biologist in mountain lions, said that with other states, we asked, well, how did some of these other states manage to get a change for mountain lions? And he said, public outcry. Absolutely. So I'm banking on Texas to do the same. Timeline, very brief timeline. Obviously, this is a very short-term timeline. The survey going out, short-term goals, hopefully we'll get those done. Hoping to hear back from Texas Parks and Wildlife here by the end of the month or early next month on next steps with them in our conversation from July. Challenges, well, we have no shortage of challenges. Entrenched attitudes, gosh, nobody has any of those. Different considerations depending on where people live. Long timeline, and quite frankly, if this stretches on for years, people get tired. It's like, oh my God, will we never be done with this? Funding, oh yeah, money. Got to have some money to do some of this, don't we? So far, I must say the project really hasn't really cost much, at least not to Texas Native Cats or the individuals in our working group. Delays, yes, we've already faced some of those. Communicating to the public. How do we get the word out to the public? Other priorities of key individuals, regardless of whether that's part of this working group or Texas Parks and Wildlife, we go to the legislature, people there too. Potential opposition by decision makers. Oh yeah. Lack of public awareness. As I said, most people that I've ever talked to do not know that this cat has no protection. So what can you do? Well, educate yourself about the issues, participate in outreach events. So I'll give you what I'm talking about here, an idea. Several years ago, I presented to the Hays County Master Naturalists, and they were so concerned about the comments I had about mountain lions that they decided, one, they would go to the commission meeting, which they did. They went to the open meeting in August of that year. And then this was back, of course, pre-COVID. And they had outreach events in their community, and they said, we'll go and represent the cats. I said, great. So I sent them some cat postcards that have information on there and some talking points and a little banner, and they were going to outreach events and just talking about the cats, getting people familiar with them. So that is certainly an option that anybody could do. Contact Parks and Wildlife about your concerns. Sign up for our newsletter. because there are going to be more steps in there in terms of what our next steps will be. Stay in touch with or volunteer with Texas Native Cats. And as we're always encouraged by Texas Master Naturalists, be the change. And with that, my God, it's 8 o'clock. How about that? And that is
Perfect
all.
timing.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. I am supposed to end share and make Claire the host. So stop share.
And people, y'all can unmute yourself and turn your video on if you want to, and just call out with any questions that you have for Monica.
Okay, whoops, I just muted you. Claire, sorry.
No, that was me. I was
Oh, that was
temporarily
you.
unmuted.
I'm not, okay, unlike before when we were testing this, now I'm not seeing the 3 little dots on your name. Can you turn your video back on? There,
There she is.
okay.
There she is.
Let's see.
So one question I had for you, Monica, was and there are places obviously where mountain lions and panthers both exist.
Betsy's here. Let's see, Carlos is there.
Do they compete or fight against each other or what?
Mountain lions and panthers are the same species. Are
Well,
you thinking of jaguars?
Jaguars,
Oh, okay.
jaguars and mountain lions. Do they
Yeah.
fight or what?
Oh, I'd rather you do it.
They can. I will tell you, we don't have
Oh,
jaguars in Texas anymore.
So it'd be in
Um,
South
South America. South America. So I will tell you, I've been down to Brazil a number of times. And okay, I need to. I'm getting more trouble. Anyhow, I've been down to an area called the Pantanal, which is the largest wetlands in the world, and they have just amazing jaguars, all kinds of wildlife down there. I got to see many, many jaguars while I was there, and their habitat sometimes does overlap with mountain lions, but the jaguars in that particular part of Brazil are so big. I mean, some of these cats get up to be about 300 pounds. They're enormous. That the mountain lions usually just leave them alone. Now, if the 2 species are roughly the same size, then sometimes it can be a draw. I understand. Sometimes a mountain lion could win out over a jaguar, but the jaguar is definitely typically the stronger cat. It's got a tremendous jaw. It's the only species of cat that regularly kills its prey with a bite to the skull. So it depends. I would say for the most part, they try to avoid each other, to be honest, if at all possible. I hope that answered your question.
Yep, it did. Any other questions?
I have quick one on Texas Park and Wildlife. I mean, they have a pretty big Facebook page. I've been on their page. What about putting that survey on their website that people could, you want as many people as you can that are interested in the parks and wildlife in general, answering this survey. I mean, I've never seen it. I'd love to see it. I'd love to participate, but I don't know if it goes to the people that really would be able to do something to help.
Well, but the idea here with the survey is just to get, it's really
Right.
to get attitudes.
Right. And I mean, Texas Park and Wildlife, their Facebook page, take a look at their numbers. I think that could give you a bigger arena for survey respondents. They'd be willing to host it.
Well, if they would. I will tell you that, how should I say this? Texas Parks and Wildlife has a lot of great people, and I mean that sincerely. I know some number of them, and they privately are encouraging us a lot to do what we're doing. But from a higher level, there's a lot of concern from a political standpoint about mountain lions. They are a controversial topic in Texas as they are everywhere else. They're predators. And at this point, I wouldn't exactly say they're willing partners.
Well, they do focus more on hunting.
Oh, yes, and
Never
deer.
see,
Deer.
you don't see too much other than pushing the parks for hunting,
Right.
you know, which I wish they would balance that out a little bit. I said, what about hunting with cameras? Never get a response from them.
Well, you know that, but that's an interesting point. And frankly, this whole concept of ecotourism or hunting with cameras, birders, those sorts of people are now starting to bring in billions of dollars. And hunting, as we know it, typical hunting is on the decline.
Well,
So,
hopefully.
it is. I mean, not just in Texas, but everywhere. But their constituents, even though, and I don't mean this to bash them, I think this is just their reality, their perception of their reality is that their constituents are hunters and landowners. Even though, you know, they represent all of us. Well, where does wildlife live? It doesn't live in the woodlands necessarily. It doesn't live in Dallas. It lives in rural areas. So those are the people that they focus on. We're trying to get them, okay, folks, you know, you got a much bigger audience than that particular segment of society. But it's a multi-headed monster. I mean, I appreciate your idea. It's a good one. I think they would probably remove the post if I tried to put something out there like that.
No, I mean, they'd have to cooperate.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would definitely have to.
So-
do okay. But I mean, it would
Carlos,
probably be the Texas state parks where you're going to be putting your camera traps. So at some point, if they can't even post a survey, how are we going to get the camera traps and
actually-
radio collars and everything else going without their participation?
Most of the studies, if we end up doing a statewide survey, that will be on private property. Most of it will not be on state lands. So that's where they go, because that's where the cats are.
And Big Bend, possibly the national park would
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Monica,
Yeah.
Carlos had an interesting comment that Carol Allen, it's in the chat, that Carol Allen did the impossible with the Kemp Ridley turtle. And he has faith that you're going to make a big difference in this fight for the mountain lion. So
Well,
he's behind you
thank
all the
you.
way.
Thank you. I hope so. I would just say there's one key difference. One key difference here. The Kemp's Ridley turtle is not a predator.
Right.
Okay.
Doesn't have the negative stigma that
No,
comes with that.
No, you
Any
know,
other
there-
questions from everybody?
Well, I just wanted, this is Kathy, and I just wanted to, again, thank you, Monica, for this presentation. I know I myself did not know anything about this, so I am so happy, and I know our group is going to get involved and
Good.
do what
Good.
we can, and it was just a eye-opening presentation, and I
Definitely.
sure appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I'd like to stay in touch with you. Not sure what the best way is to do that. I mean, again, I'd encourage you to sign up for the newsletter. I'm going to be working on one here pretty soon and get that out before the end of the year. There's, again, you could do outreach in the community once you feel comfortable doing that. There are ways to get involved, but at some point, it's going to take people commenting, probably to Texas Parks and Wildlife or the legislature. We want to change. It is time for a change.
Right.
And Diane, if you see an interesting article in her newsletter, you might want to include, kind of reprint it in our newsletter too.
Sure.
Would that be all right to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. No,
thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other
Great
questions?
presentation. Thank you.
Do you have any statistics for the Guadalupe Mountains National Park?
Interesting. That is one of the places I think where where there had been a high number of mountain lions killed out there. That's about the extent of what I know. It's been very, very high. I don't know what the statistics are now because again, nobody's keeping track of it.
And we've hiked and camped up there, and we've seen where they've killed and stashed deer, one night up in the high country, we heard one screaming, you know,
Uh-huh.
like the woman screaming, and it froze our blood, I'll tell you.
I bet it did. That was likely a female in heat.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great though. I just think, you know, I've been very fortunate to have been some places where I'm close to wildlife like that. And it's just one of the most amazing things to hear it, to witness it, to see wildlife in their wild habitat.
Awesome.
Are your slides available on your website?
I don't have them out there at this point. It might be something I do at some point, but I have not put them out on the website at this point.
Well, fantastic. We really appreciate you coming in, giving us this presentation. It was wonderful information.
Absolutely. So happy to do it. And so glad for the interest and enthusiasm and the questions.
All right.
Thank you so much. I guess we should go ahead and, unless somebody has another question, Claire, let's
Yeah.
go ahead and
All
Yeah.
right. I will say goodnight.